Another edition of Riding Home. This time, final feelings before Georgia Arkansas. Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry, as usual. Matt, this is a top 10 matchup. Georgia's 8 of their last 17 games have been top 10 matchups. A huge recruiting weekend. You've got KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas quarterback, in theory hurt. I don't know how seriously. Certainly JT Daniels, Kirby Smart said Wednesday, is dealing with a lat injury, which is in his back. So you've got some question marks out there for the Dogs and Hogs. Where are you with your final feelings on this game? I mean, and it's a big recruiting weekend too. I think I said that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, lots of five stars going to be in the stands, but Georgia's going to have to play well. This is their biggest test so far. They've cruised the last 3 weeks against teams that are just bad, and this is not a bad team. They're actually a good team on both sides of the ball. They tackle well defensively. I don't think Georgia's going to score a ton of points. I think they're going to get some points here and there, but they tackle well. They run the ball well offensively. A lot of finesse to their game. I think they can trip up Georgia here and there, but we're going to see how good their defense is against an Arkansas team that didn't light it up last week, Dean, against Texas A&M, but they can run the football. They have one of the best playmakers in the conference in Treylon Burks. And Jefferson, it doesn't look like he's 100%. It doesn't look like JT Daniels is 100%, but he's a big kid who can move and get tough yards. So Georgia's going to have to get them into some third and longs, big time passing downs, and that's where they're at their best. But if Arkansas gets the ground game going, Georgia could be in a little bit of trouble here and there.
Yeah. Well, Burks is a real problem. Okay,
Yeah.
and when you look at Arkansas and what they do, there's three things that jumped out to me. First of all, just my take. If Jefferson's not playing, and I fully expect him to play, if Jefferson's not playing, Arkansas has no chance to win this game. He is what makes Arkansas go right now. I mean, you're talking about someone who is a little shorter than me, but basically my size, about 6'4", 240, and can run. Not just that, can throw. The big thing with the Hogs, Matt, and this is all down below. Just click the link below and you'll be able to read it. The thing with the Hogs is they have explosive plays. They don't ask Jefferson to throw it a lot, but when they do, it's typically on first down, and that's where they've had a lot of explosive plays: 90-yard touchdowns, 85-yard touchdowns, 60-yard touchdowns, 45-yard plays, 30-yard plays. You know, giving them the capability to hit Burks, who is about as fast as anybody Georgia's going to deal with, man. So
Yeah.
I think for me, if Georgia can't stop the run, it's going to be a challenging day. I'm not sure they lose, but it's going to be a challenging day.
Again, we talked about Georgia's defense being the best in the country right now, one of the best in school history. If they can lock down and shut down, Arkansas, then that narrative is going to continue, and it would be earned, I think, at that point, because they do
Why
have a
say
lot of
earned?
guys who can make plays. Well, I think they've got multiple running backs. They have a quarterback who can do a lot for you. The
He
offensive line
can
is
be really dangerous in the run
yeah,
game. Yeah, for
they do
sure.
have Burks, and the offensive line is coached by the head coach, who is an offensive line coach. So I expect them to move the ball and have success throughout the year. I don't know how much success they're going to have in Athens, Georgia, when that crowd's rocking on a 3rd and 5.
Why don't you explain? I mean, everybody that watches these doesn't go to the games, and even if they do, like I'm on the field, and I can tell you, some loud matters more than other loud. Why? Because once you can't hear, you can't hear, and I mean, like you're gonna have to communicate a particular way. I thought Sam Pittman sounded very confident in the way that they prepare for these games. I don't think he thinks they're going to be freaked out at all. But Matt, this is the first true road game of the year now. I think Jefferson started in a road game last year, but it wasn't Sanford Stadium.
Right. I think depending on the situation, depending on where you are on the field, I think one end zone is a little definitely more closed than the other. That one's really tough to handle. But when this crowd is rocking, and they can get rocking when
Yeah.
they are a top 5 team with a big opponent. And then this is not the greatest slate of home games this year, so it might be the only top 10 matchup they have at home this year. So that's a big deal. They're going to be rocking, and I expect it to have an impact on the game. I don't know if it's a big impact or not, but there are going to be situations where Arkansas has to burn a timeout or they get a false start in a big way because of the crowd noise.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. I mean, you don't. So I don't know if he started against Arkansas a year ago, but he played the bulk of that game. It was 18 to 33, so about 50%. Like KJ Jefferson can be effective as a 50% passer because his passes often go for 40 yards. And so those can be back-breaking plays. And then you got the Burke guy, okay, Matt. If Georgia's giving up big plays to Josh Vann, who is not fast like Burke, they certainly could be susceptible to dealing with to having an issue with Burke. And I just think this game, and all of our written final feelings are below. I'd encourage you to check that out because we can only wrap up some of this stuff for so long in the time we're allotted here. But for me, Matt, it's still going to be hard for Arkansas to get a win. I mean, it's tough to play in Athens. They've lost once since 2007, since 2017 in Athens. That was the Carolina game in 2019. It's just hard to play there. And as well as Arkansas has played, I think if you stop the run, which is always easier said than done, it's going to be hard for Arkansas to do it. Now, how do they stop the run if you're Georgia against the Hogs?
Keep doing what you're doing. Jordan Davis has to continue to play at the level he has been. Devontae Wyatt's doing his thing. Jalen Carter gets better every game. We know what Trayvon Walker can do. They've got to have a second pair of eyes on Burks. They can't let him have 2 or 3 explosive plays in this game. That's the only way they're going to be able to stick around for 4 quarters. Georgia can't let that guy beat them. They have other talent. They've got other weapons, but not like him.
But Burke, you're talking about the receiver, right? I mean, the problem there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll just throw it right back to you. The problem with that is if you're worried with him, that means Lewis Cine and Chris Smith aren't going to be as able to stop the run. Clemson couldn't run because those guys were coming down. Now they're going to have to deal with that guy.
Yeah, I expect them to be in that nickel formation. Most of this game have that fit defensive back in there, but I expect it to be Darian Kendrick following Burks with another set of eyes, someone helping, but they are talented and deep enough to where they can make up that with some of the other guys doing their job. But at the end of the day, you can't let their best player, the guy can beat you in many ways, go for 8 or 9 catches, $150 or 60, and 2 big scores.
When you look at Arkansas, they've only had one game where they've run for fewer than 200 yards. I mean, which was the A&M game this past week, which they kind of dilly-dallied in at the end of the, when Jefferson got out, that became a lot more difficult for them. They didn't play well against Rice, I would say to you. I mean, tied in the fourth quarter, 17-all with Rice is not an ideal situation, but then to zoom away with 3 straight touchdowns, that's a good, and that game was tight until midway in the fourth, to be honest. I mean, they only got up 24-17 with 4 minutes to go in the game. So they only got it away from a one score game with 4 minutes to go in the game. So not an ideal situation, but they really are physical. I think the problem for Georgia, and we can talk about the problems for Arkansas in a little bit here because they've got plenty of problems, is Barry Odom's a really good offensive coordinator, and then defensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator at Arkansas, whose name escapes me off the top of my head, but I know he's a knowable name. They're problematic, man. They do a lot of stuff. They're not just they do the number one tendency for the Hogs that's a little odd versus what I've seen with other people is, Matt, they throw on first down to try to score, or they throw on first down to get their production in the passing game. That's when they throw. He is not very good on second and third down, KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, he likes to sling it around a good bit too. He likes to push it deep.
Too.
And you don't want to do that exactly on second and third down. So on first downs, he likes to kind of chuck it deep a little bit. But is it Dan Enos? Is that the
No, it's not the
OC?
Coordinator. I can't remember his name. I'll look it up. But
they know what they're doing, and they have a plan. And listen, they're playing really well under Coach Pittman.
It is Dan
they play
Enos.
for him.
Excuse me, Matt. I said Dan Enos. Is Kendall Briles, who was Art Briles' kid.
Okay.
And it looks like Baylor at times. It's just kind of
lot of motion. They
Yeah.
try to trick you.
I
It's
was gonna
very
say
sly.
wiggly stuff, but
Yeah.
but the
That,
problem is too, man. And I'll throw it back to you. But they do all that, and then they try to punch you right in your face.
yeah, they bring a toughness to that finesse style of offense play. So if anyone can handle it, it should be this fast, aggressive Georgia defense with a lot of different guys, especially at linebacker who can really run.
If and we don't bullshit people, but we're saying all that, and then Georgia's still almost a 20-point favorite. Help me reconcile these things. Is this game about Georgia or the Hogs?
I do think it's about Georgia because they need to show that they can beat a really good team after 3 weeks of playing bad teams. Yeah, I don't know if Arkansas, how long can they keep playing the way they have? They're in the middle of a gauntlet right now.
Yeah, they
They
are.
played really well against Texas. Had a big emotional, thrilling win last week
Yeah.
against the Aggies. How long can they keep this up, especially if they're being asked to play on the road against number 2 Georgia the week after that? So
And
I
and
do think it's about Georgia showing that they are a top 2, maybe number 1 team in the country by beating this Arkansas team at home like that.
well, don't look now, but then they go to Ole Miss next week.
Yeah.
And the West is just unforgiving.
Yeah. The previous coach said it's a work in progress. This is not an easy job, not an easy fix. So he's turned it around pretty well, but eventually they do run into Alabama and Ole Miss and Auburn and LSU and of course Georgia this week. So they can't do this forever, but I do think they're going to give Georgia a good fight. But I don't see how they can win this game. Again, Georgia's healthier. They're getting healthier. They're playing really well. And
Does the thing with JT's back concern you?
a little bit because I think we there's the chance you could see Stetson out there
Yeah.
and then it becomes kind of a coin flip on what Stetson you're gonna see.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
as we've seen, Kirby has no problem putting Stetson in there. He feels very comfortable with him.
Well, we're
But you would
not.
like to finally see a 100% healthy JT Daniels for a full game, and that's not something we've seen so
I
far.
don't know if we're going to see that until maybe Jacksonville, man. And I don't know if we're going to see that then. I mean, the you know Mel Kiper came out today, and his top 10 quarterbacks did not include JT Daniels. And does that matter a lot? I mean, I don't know. Who was number one? You want to guess? Is your guy?
Malik Willis.
Yeah, yeah, and then Matt Corral, and then Spencer Rattler. But like I got nothing against JT. I think he's been he's been Kirby's best quarterback so far. But when you look at everything, you say, hey man, once somebody gets injured, sometimes injuries can follow you a little bit, and it's not the same injury. JT is not a big person. He is not KJ Jefferson. He's not like me. He's not unnecessarily heavy. He is a slender guy. He doesn't need to be getting hit, and they need him for his brain and I guess his arm. His arm ain't bad either.
Now,
But
what is it that's going on now? We
so
know
it's
about the knee, we know about the oblique. What is it kind
so
of
now
now?
it's called a lat, is a typical sports term, but basically it's an upper back problem if you want to call it that. It's kind of can be to the side. I don't know. I don't think it's a major oblique. You got to stop throwing. I mean, like you got to chill out a little bit. With this, I don't think it's as big of a deal. I could completely expect him to not just play, but play the whole game, start the whole deal. But you want him to get healthy, if possible, because this stretch are three of the roughest teams in terms of physicality. You got the Hogs, are at Auburn, and then you come home to Kentucky, who just does nothing but throws rocks in the kitchen sink and computer screens at you the whole day long. They're not fun to deal with. So I don't know. I mean, this Georgia team, man, has not been healthy the entire year, Matt. And I think part of me says, hey, it's just what it is. I don't want. I hate next man up. But it's like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what it's going to be. You're going to have to deal with it.
Eventually, these receivers have to get back and
They're not
healthy,
healthy.
Dean. I mean, the guys that played last week looked good. Lad McConkey, I think, but Rosemary Jackson down again.
Smith.
Smith down again
Blaylock.
with something else. Blaylock is down with the hamstring still. Who
And
knows when he'll be back?
George, we don't know. I mean, but George,
Yeah.
I think it's possible for George to be back sooner, perhaps, than we typically would have thought with an ACL. Ron Corson saying to Kirby, who said to us, it wasn't the typical tear. Da, 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 da. But anyway, those injuries will settle themselves out. Do you see Arkansas in the second half being a challenging game for Georgia?
Yeah, I could see it being really close in, late in the third. But eventually, where I think it's going to be the fourth quarter, probably early in the fourth quarter, Georgia's depth and talent will take over, and we'll see the better team win the game. And I think that is Georgia.
Well, we'll say more in our thoughts below. Make sure you're clicking down there. We'll see you on the website.